This week on the Media Core Minute podcast, I sit down with Colton Bjornson, the owner of Tier 1 Clicks. We talk about paid ads, burning the boats, and what to be looking out for in an ad agency. This is a good one. It's something that we haven't covered a lot, so definitely take a listen. It's going to be good. Colton, how are we doing today, man?
Wonderful.
Good.
Another day at the office.
Another day.
Office here.
Yeah, MC headquarters. Yep.
I'm here at least 3 times a week.
That's right. I was telling somebody about the office, and I was like, I was going to say headquarters, and I'm like, do you have to have multiple locations to call it like an HQ, or is it?
Nah, I think you can just do it. Yeah.
Well, the global HQ is here in Rochester. Yes.
Yeah. You can just start to set up satellite locations. Right?
We'll have little PO boxes all over.
Absolutely.
This would be the hub.
We can get ranked on Google.
Yeah.
Right? In other locations. We have contractors that do that.
Yep. But sweet, man, I have wanted to get you on for a while now, and you finally, your net worth is now high enough to know.
But, all the listeners, Josh wouldn't allow me on. We've been friends for, he's the best man at my wedding, right? He told me I wasn't allowed on here until I did something substantial, so here we are.
No, see, the story was
4 years later.
I was waiting until we had the best podcast set up that we've ever had, and to finally bring you on.
Yeah.
And but it'll be good because I'm excited to dive in.
Yep.
You got a lot of different knowledge that people don't have in a lot of these spaces too, which is interesting. But I was just talking to Dakota too, and he's like, it's fun to have different people in at different stages.
Yeah.
We've had multiple, generations into a company. We've had, guys, 40 years into starting their own thing, but, both you and I are, under 5-6
Correct.
years into our businesses, and that comes with a ton of different perspective as well.
Yeah.
And we got listeners all over the place. So kind of going into that, what is Tier 1 Clicks? What is your company? What do you guys do?
Yep. So we're a marketing firm that works only in the HVAC and insulation space. So our biggest thing is by far paid ads. It's if you talk to any contractor, right, what do they need more of? It's just leads, right, or any business in general. But we got really specific initially with HVAC and then with insulation. So that's our main focus. And as we grew, we added on SEO, just GMB management, web development, things of that nature. Those are definitely a back burner, right? Mm-hmm. We don't aggressively go after that in new client acquisition, but mostly paid ads, right? It's the sexiest thing out there. The best thing about paid ads is it's scalable, right? It's the most scalable thing in business. As long as you know your numbers, you know your KPIs, and you can keep them relatively the same, it's never going to be it's not wizardry and magic and unicorns, right? But it's going to be a solid way to grow a business as long as you can handle the cost per acquisition.
Why do you think there's been certain stigma around the agencies, the paid ad space that just I feel like so many. I mean, even MediaCore when I was starting, I was gonna do social media marketing and then video. Yeah, it's just this this would be an add-on.
Yep.
But I got shut down right away, and it evolved into just video. But there's always kind of been this
yes. Yeah, so this is the problem, and I've been this guy. So I went through this because this is how, when we'll talk about that, I'm sure we'll talk about that later in the podcast, how it all came about, right? But there's a lot of guys out there now that are teaching how to start agencies as a way for people to just make money, right? And the problem is with an agency, everything's with a firm, we're transitioning into more of a firm now, right? So I don't even use the word agency anymore because it just doesn't sound good, right? People know what agencies are. They're a kid in his basement, okay? Mm-hmm. And you can start there, that's fine, but it's what are your intentions? Now there's a bunch of these coaches out there and guys that are hey, you can make X amount of money doing this. Just run a company's Facebook ads, right? And it seems super attractive. So now you have all these kids in their basement getting into it, and they've got ads everywhere, and they promise you the moon, and that's how they teach you is promise them the moon, right? And we'll figure out delivery later. And it's so I mean, even when we talk to owners, just HVAC contractors and installation guys all the time, and they're just burnt. And that makes our sales process so much harder, right?
It's coming in with so much skepticism.
So much. Hey, you're the fifth one. All right, cool, right? There's really only 3 or 4 players in the industry that we really see often that we actually compete with, right? But going back to your question, that is the number one problem is people are just trying to use it as a get rich quick type of deal, right? Take your money, it's your remote, you're never going to see me again, peace out, right? And it's such low barrier to entry, right? Guys, you got to buy to get started, and I know this because this is what I had to do to get started, right? You buy a software that costs $300 a month. You hire a VA. That's what the coaches will tell you to do. And I'm going to be honest, the coach that I had, I loved. He did a great job, right? You'd have to be a good person to actually want to deliver a good product. But in terms of teaching me how to structure the business, he did wonderful.
Yep.
Very helpful guy. But right, so you have the $300 software. You have to hire a VA, which you can pay $200 a month. Okay. And ideally, you want to run some sort of ads to acquire new customers, or you just go knock on doors in your local town, right? But then for the people that don't know how to deliver the service, that's scary because like they don't know what they're doing, right? And then they realize the company, you're very going to quickly realize you're a guy in your basement, right? So they run paid ads at however much they can afford to acquire new customers. They promise the moon. They have no idea how to do fulfillment. They're either figuring it out on their own, trying to, or they're white labeling it. Right. And sometimes that can work. Like it's no different than a subcontractor selling their HVAC services and then subbing, right? I have companies like that we work with all over. They literally just own a sales organization, right? But do they have subs that they trust that actually do a good job?
Yeah.
Right. That was a long-winded answer, but I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. It's just essentially crappy people that are just trying to make money, and you need to be able to defer which ones are which.
I feel like that's even, I mean, there's a lot of industries that have that get rich quick scheme that, and obviously with access to the internet and YouTube and things like that, and every kid now wanting to just, be a millionaire and do the least amount of work that they can.
Yep.
For any, influencer to just say, hey, I can do this and I can get you here. And, at the end of the day, they're making a ton of money.
That's what they're making their money off.
They're promising that. They're just sitting there making all the damn money.
Me and you talk about that all the time. Like guys that try and do it, fail at doing it, and then start selling courses how to do it.
No.
Like that's where a lot of their money. Now, luckily, like I said, the guy that the mentor that I hired and the team that I hired, they were not like that, right? They actually
had their own businesses on the side
correct.
As well as doing
and they
coaching.
grew multiple different firms before they started and they had proof of it, right? But yeah, and then so I mean, there's a guy I specifically remember coming up with who, you have benchmarks in the agency world, like the first one's 10K a month, and then it's 30, and then it's 50, and then it's 80, and then it's 150, right? Or whatever. And he hit 30K in his agency, which to any business owner sitting around here, like 30 grand, do you have a business, right? Whereas like the agency world is a little bit different because your overhead is so low, right? That 30K is actually quite a bit because your profit margins, depending on the agency you run, could be anywhere from 45 to 75%, right? So, but I've seen a guy get there, which I can tell we're well past that. I can tell you guys that's nothing, and then start coaching on how to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's definitely.
And then you sit back and you watch that, like.
Correct.
This.
Yeah.
Dude, man.
We've had people. Me and Josh were actually just talking about this. We've had people that have come that I initially got in when I got into the space and I was going through coaching programs that were in the same coaching programs as me, that then failed to continue to grow or whatever. They were good guys. I liked them, right? But then a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years down the road, they're selling me on like how to get more appointments for our firm. It's like, dude, brother, dog, you should have been able to do that for yourself, right? You'd still be in business. I mean, let's be honest, sales cures all. So if you're selling enough, you can still have a bunch of fires on the back end, but you're going to stay in business, right? Even if your just churn is crazy high, you're still going to stay in business. But yeah, it's interesting.
It's wild.
It is, yeah.
And you really got to be careful, I guess, with who you're watching. I was just, I don't know, LinkedIn has this new thing where you can give insights. And like, I was almost picturing myself like years ago, like, man, if I was talking about all these topics back then, I would have wildly different answers. But now have been doing so much.
Yes,
it's like,
yes.
That's BS, none of that. Yes. Like, don't pay attention to that.
Yes, dude.
Really watch out for this. And it's like, you don't know until
you have no idea.
Do it long enough to realize how things, the world works in a certain way. And we're still young into business and have plenty more to learn.
Yeah.
Which is also exciting too, because like, you look back and when you started, you're like, that guy had no clue what was into.
Yeah.
So then what's 10 years from now when we look back at ourselves and go, yeah, you guys.
Correct.
No idea what you're doing.
100%. Yeah, no, you do have to be careful who you watch and what you take in. And unfortunately, you're going to have to get punched in the face a few times. I actually just saw a clip. Alex Hormozy was talking about this curve that people go through, right? And it's when you see this thing that's the next best thing, right? And, hey, make all this money here, right? And you have this optimism about it, like, oh, it's great, right? Like uninformed optimism is what he called, right? And you're like, oh, I'm going to make all this money. And then a little bit, this is the top of the curve. And then a little bit farther down the curve, you have informed optimism. You're like, man, this is a lot harder than what I thought it was, right? And then all the way at the bottom, I think he had like the valley of despair is what he called it. Or like, this is hard.
This is terrible.
This is a business. Like, this sucks. And this is where most people quit. And then you see an upstroke, right? Where it's like, okay, now I know what I'm doing. And most people quit here. And then we've definitely been there. And then they just start that cycle all over again.
Right.
Right.
Well, that I feel like that cycle is like the layers to, like, you can progress to X amount of either dollars or employees.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, like I can't see this ever being bad again.
Yeah.
And then once you hit that, new problems that you've never seen ever coming or could expect hit you in the face, and then you go back down to,
Correct.
This is terrible. This sucks. Like, why am I doing this? Like, I'd rather just work for somebody and make a ton of money being, really good at my job because I can work harder than people.
Yeah.
But then, you get past it. But it's like literally every time you hit a new layer, it's new problems, and you go back into this cycle of like, dude, I never knew this was going to happen.
Correct.
Could foresee this being an issue. So it's interesting, that cycle. Before we get too into things like that, I want to kind of even go back, hear more about your story. Every entrepreneur has, kind of that time in their life where they're like, man, like I want to be doing my own thing. When was that for you? What were you kind of doing, during growing up?
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm going to pour this whiskey too. So.
Yeah, please do. So I'll bring it way back. So one of my big hobbies is hunting. I love it. It's at one point in time, it was like the career I wanted to pursue, and that was probably my first. So a little bit of background: I come from a small town. My mom was a tax assessor. My dad was a welder. Right. My stepdad was he ran a grain elevator. Right. We had a small family farm. So needless to say, I don't come from money at all, or people that know how to run businesses at all. It's probably the polar opposite. So. As I was growing up, one, I'm not ashamed to admit, my wife will tell this to anybody, I hated authority. I don't like listening to people.
You still don't?
No, not at all. Like, yes, not to go down a totally different path, but yes, I hate it. And anyway, so I've always had not a bad attitude. It's just like I want to do my own thing. Right. And the first kind of entrepreneurial thing that ever came about was I was sitting watching the hunting channel with my dad, and I've always been, my parents were really good at telling me, hey, you can do whatever you want. Right. They didn't know how to help me get there, but like, hey, do whatever you want. Like I always felt like I could be the best at something. Mm-hmm. Right. My parents were always good at that. And so I remember sitting on the TV or watching the TV, and I was like, why don't I just start a hunting show? And I'm like 13 at the time. I'm like, I could do this. Mm-hmm. Like by that time, like 13 sounds super young. Little context, I started hunting when I was 3. It was when I was first in a tree stand with my dad. So like that's what we did. That's what my dad loves to do. And I was like, I can do this, right? And so I did. I bought a camera, and it's just like you didn't think about it, I just did it.
Yep.
Right? It was like I bought a camera. I started filming hunts. We called it the Craze Next Generation. I got a couple of my friends, right? We started filming hunts. We were getting dropped off by our moms, right? And we had some $200 computer, try to get some janky editing software, and we went out to get sponsors. I have an aunt that was hunted for Matthews. She was the first woman to ever shoot a polar bear, so I contacted her. And this was back when you'd still write letters into sponsors. I didn't have internet growing up, so you didn't really have an email to send people. And so we did that. That was like my first thing. Like, hey, I'm gonna go do it. It's mine. Yep. And that is still one of my biggest passions is hunting. And the farther I got into it, the older I got. I was like, okay. There wasn't a lot. I couldn't see a future in it. And I always knew I really wanted to be able to provide for my family, make a lot of money, and whatever that may be to people. And I was like, that's what I want. I don't know if I see it with hunting, because in hunting industry, you either have to own the show or you have to own a product. That's just it. Okay, so that was
pretty saturated too.
It is, yeah. So that was like my first thing, and kind of forgot about that through high school. Or as I got into high school, we were still filming hunts, but we weren't focused on it as much. And then right when I got into college. That kind of went out the door, and I was like, okay, I'm in college now. It's time to go to college and get a job, right?
What were you going to college for?
I was first in St. Cloud State, and it was for ecology and field biology. So hunting, outdoors. I was going to get my PhD in ecology and do whatever the heck those people do, right? The
You
idea.
didn't have like a job though that you wanted?
No, well, you'd be a ecologist, right? So you could be anywhere. You could be stationed in Alaska, right? And the more and more I learned about it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to go get my PhD. I'm gonna make $70,000 a year at the end of it. I'm gonna have to. I was already with my now wife, right? And I'm like, I'm gonna have to travel and do all these things across because you have to do like internships everywhere. All these hoops you have to jump through. And this dude standing in front of me in a lecture telling me I'm gonna make $70,000, and I'm already 20 G's deep in my first year of college that I'm paying for with debt money that I don't have. This sucks. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I remember exactly the time I'm laying in my dorm bed or my room in my dorm room in my bed, and I see a Facebook ad. And here we go. You be careful what you watch, right? Or what you see. And I see, I don't even know how they said it. Like, hey, affiliate market. I don't even think they said affiliate marketing, but it was like, get rich now type of deal.
Yeah.
Like, what is this, right? 18. Like, let's go, baby. Right? And so I click on it.
He's in bed like,
yeah, dude, that's what I want
to be rich.
Instantly excited out of my mind, right? Like, I'm imagining him like, oh, dude, Lambos, let's go. You're like, right? So whatever. So I joined this guy's webinar, and that's when they back when they used VSLs. And I joined the webinar and I listened to it, and the whole deal was, long story short, it was affiliate marketing. So you ran Facebook ads, you ran them to a product, they bought the product, you made a commission. But in reality, it was more of like a pyramid scheme because the people that were getting you in, they were making money off it too. So like, it wasn't actually an MLM, but it kind of was. So you had to buy the product first, and the product was something, I don't remember what it was. It was like a card of some sorts, but it would cost you like $500. I didn't have $500. So I was like, okay, well, I got to save up $500. It took me like 3 months to save up $500 while I was going to school because I had 18 credits my freshman year. I didn't work, right? And like I had meal plans and everything, right? It wasn't necessary. I worked when I went home for breaks, obviously. And I got the $500. Finally, I called the dude. I'm like, hey, I'm ready to sign up. And he's like, oh, we're not doing it anymore. We switched projects. Or, excuse me, we switched like the thing that they were selling.
Yeah.
Products, excuse me.
Yeah.
And they switched it to a water machine called a Kangen. And it's $8,000. And you have to buy the water machine before you do the thing, right? So, like, I was, whatever. I wanted to do it so bad. I was still bent on it. I remember, like, went to my grandparents and was like, Gramps, I'm like, you got to loan me $8,000, right?
Oh, you're going hard into this.
Dude, I was like, I want it, right? And my grandpa said something to me that I'll never forget. He sat me down. He walked me through all of it. And he's like, frankly, he's like, Colton, this is bullshit. He goes, dude, they're getting you to buy an $8,000 water. I'm like, you're not the one making money. And he looked at me and he said, he goes, if you didn't make it, you're not making the money. Like, if you didn't create it, you're not making the money. And that stuck with me always till today. And once again, being 18, I made the same mistake again. So the next thing that I did, probably 4 months later, here in our rural area, there's a lot of MLMs that go around, right? So you got Amway and whatever. We don't want to get cease and desist, so we're going to keep off the names. but you have all these names, right? And that, of course, once again, now I'm 19, and I'm thinking, well, if I can apply my paid ads experience to that, I could crush it, right? So I got in with one of those companies. My mom was doing it at the time. It was supplement products. I'm a big fitness guy. So I was like, okay, I could do this. Whatever, I made a couple bucks the first year and a half or whatever doing it. And then I kind of came to the realization that every meeting we had was all rah-rah and nobody actually had any real advice. And then you feel like you're trying to force other people into, like, your buddies so you can make money. It just feels scummy.
Join under me.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah. And it was like, at the end of the day, you guys, going back to what my grandpa told me, like, you guys don't own anything. Like, this is, no offense to MLM guys, right? But that's the way it was. It's like, all right, I'm like, I need to do something that's mine. So I took probably go ahead.
Even to be fair, like, some of them are making a lot.
Crazy amounts.
But the people on the bottom are not making anything. And that's the whole.
So then you have to ask yourself, right? Do I want to dedicate my time to be the guy on the top?
Yes.
Right? Or do I want to just start my own company and be the guy on top?
Yep.
Right? At the end of the day, the guy on top's making $500,000 a year, but he doesn't own a damn thing.
Right.
Right? Now, yes, you could use those money and buy assets or do whatever, right? But so I was like, okay. So I took a year and a half off, and then I started Premier Fit. So I was big into fitness. I was watching a bunch of guys in the fitness industry. I'm like, I'm going to start a brand, right? So that was a fitness brand. But
you were working all this time.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
These weren't like your full-time gigs.
Yep.
These were side projects.
Absolutely. Yep.
Try to turn into something.
Yeah. So after the first year at St. Cloud, I hated that school so much. I transferred, and I was going to major in soils. God, who wants to major in dirt, guys? But I did.
You did, apparently.
Yeah, I did, because I didn't have ecology and field biology. And then I got into my second year and I realized, like, I'm spending all this money. I don't know what I want to do. I hate this. This is dumb. I'm in debt a lot already. And I dropped out my second year. And then I was working at a Dick's Sporting Goods in the hunting section. And then I was trying to just figure out what I was going to do. I had a cheap apartment because it was on college campus. I was living with my buddies, right? And it was just like, all right, what am I going to do? And then, that's when you get like all like like he dropped out and like blah, 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 blah. It's like, I don't care, whatever. And it was like, okay, what am I actually going to do? I was like, well, I'll pursue fitness. And that's where this whole Premier Fit thing came from, right? And I was like, I started selling fitness plans, which I'm not a fitness approved person, right? Which you can do that, but right. And that was like, I guess I made money from it, right? And it was probably halfway decent advice, right? But it wasn't.
You're
like,
fit, and it's decent advice, and people want to know what to do.
And it was, to be frank with you guys, it was most people that worked with me, right? Like just out of shape people that I worked with that were like, hey, can you help me out? I'm like, yeah, $20, literally $20. And I'm like, I'll make this thing up for you, right? And then I was like, okay, I'm going to start something that's mine. And so then I started Premier Fit. I was still working at Dick's. Probably the first 4 months I started it. Then I moved down here with my now wife. I started selling cars at Ford, and that's when I started Premier Fit. Premier Fit was already a thing. We had our first launch. That was, to this day, probably the most fun business that I've had, because it's really cool, because it's like a culture thing and people like wearing it. And if you actually make good stuff, then it's like, then you can film the videos and you have the guys and you have the affiliate team and you have like blah, 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 blah. And it's really fun. Problem is, everybody that knows anything, there's no money in apparel, right?
Yeah, unless you're an influencer.
Correct. Unless you have a massive.
Reach the masses.
Yes. Unless you can drop a product and have 800,000 people buy it, right? Or just 800,000 people see it.
Yep.
Right? Like, I was doing stories on my Instagram that 500 people watched. And don't get me wrong, like,
they're still cool though.
Yeah, it was super cool. And like our first couple, like, yeah, granted we only made 100 to 200 units, they would sell out, right? Like our first couple stuff, like our t-shirts and everything sold out, and that was cool. Right? So it made a little bit of money.
And we met before you started that.
Yeah.
Before you even moved to Rochester, we met, when you were just still figuring that out.
Yep.
Eventually you moved, still doing, obviously, the car stuff. And
I'll never forget the fogger you had in your car.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It was like a Sensi thing.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, that was the best.
I don't know what happened about this guy. I like this guy.
I like this guy.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
But yes, no, we had already met. I had messaged you on Instagram because I was like filming YouTube videos.
Because you saw the business account. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, and I saw like drone footage and stuff, and I had just bought a drone for my YouTube videos. I was doing like fitness videos.
Because we shot that first video the first time that we ever met.
Correct.
In the gym.
Yeah.
Just like messing around, and then we did rock climbing and a bunch of random other stuff.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep. That was great.
Yeah.
See, Colton had a plan all along just to get free videos.
I got a few, guys. Don't worry.
They're still cool.
Yeah, they were cool. Yeah, I wish I could say I masterminded that, but I didn't. But yeah, so that was kind of the evolution of that, and then and I mentioned to Josh, because I was like, Premier Fit was fun, but it was like something I, even then at my stage of not knowing anything, could see it really wasn't scalable. Like, I didn't have any capital, right, to invest into it. I wasn't gonna go get invested for an apparel brand.
You're also like doing it right, which
Correct.
took a ton of upfront cash.
Correct.
Because your materials were actually custom.
Correct.
Made
Everything was custom made, custom measured.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it wasn't a Rydell cotton blend t-shirt.
That you were just slapping logos on
No.
and trying to promote. Like, it was like legit stuff. So
It was.
It cost a ton of money.
Ton of money up front.
They were super legit. That's why people really liked them.
Correct.
But yeah, what you were missing was the audience.
Correct.
You couldn't reach the masses.
100%. Yep. And even if you wanted to and you didn't have a following, like we realized at the end, we had talked about this, was like a massive affiliate program would have been cool, right? Because I didn't have a following.
Yep.
Otherwise, the only other way you're going to reach people is paid ads. And what does paid ads take? Capital. I didn't have capital, right? So, so that was the start of that. And a few months, probably a half a year before, well, I'd say a whole year before COVID, something along those lines. I came to Josh and I was like, hey, like, I don't see this. I remember exactly where we were. We were on my patio. I was like, hey, I don't see this thing being scalable. We were talking about business. And I was like, I think I should start an agency, because I'd already done Facebook ads, like for Premier Fit, and the little money we did have, and then for like affiliate marketing, I'd built ads, right? And agency was actually something I looked at years and years and years before without me even knowing it through a guy called Ty Lopez, and I think he's just a clown as well.
I looked at him too.
Yeah. So it was something I was thinking, and if I would have got into it back then, that would have been awesome because nobody was doing it. But I mentioned this to Josh, thought it was a good idea, got the LLC, did everything, didn't touch it for a year. Right? And then I remember a year rolled around and I had this LLC. COVID was already kind of in full swing. And I was like, hey, I need to do something with this. Otherwise, I'm still selling cars. I hated selling cars. It sucked, right? For a guy that's not good with authority and you tell me I got to be there 12 hours a day and then when it's time to actually leave and you got to tell me I still got to stay there. Yeah, it's like, God, it was awful. So it's terrible, man. So I'm like, okay, like I got to do something else. So I'm like building the website while I'm selling cars. And I'd like to think of myself, I'm a pretty good worker, right? But the guys at the car dealership started to notice, right? And they're like, yeah, like, what are you doing? You know, I was like, oh, I'm working on my website for this marketing agency that I started. Or anyway, so I talked to Josh and Josh like, hey, you need to pick a day. I sold cars for a year and a half. Josh like, hey, you need to pick a day to quit. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, you know, when you're selling cars, you know, it's not a part-time gig. So to like go out and try to get a bunch of clients for the agency was really difficult. So I picked a day. It was January 1st. I don't even know, was it in 2020?
Probably.
2019? Anyway.
It was 20 because I did 19.
Okay, yeah. So it was 20. And that was going to be my day I was going to quit. And long story short, that day came. I quit. I had 3 free non-paying clients at the time. Okay? Guys, right? 3 free non-paying clients.
I'm telling Colton, it's not that much to
to and I'm like, hey, I need $3,000 a month.
You only need $3,000 to live.
Like I did my math, and I needed $3,000 to live, and just with student loans and things of that nature, right? And I was like, okay. Josh's like, oh, it's not hard to do, and I'm like freaking out.
Yeah, because you always wanted to like have the stuff before you moved, and it was like that's what was taking forever.
And I couldn't do it.
I got to have the clients before I take the leap.
Yeah.
Like, nope.
Which is valid for most people, right? If you can do that, right? I've seen a lot of people like if you can't be the burn the ships guy, it's risky, right? So I quit with $7,000 in my bank account, right, to live on for however long I could get this thing started. And the week before I quit, I joined that a mentorship, a course that cost $10,000. So that really didn't add up. Right, so I paid $5,000 in cash, and then I put $5,000 of it on a card. So now I have $2,000. I'm in month 1. I'm finding out I know nothing about an agency. I thought I could just run Facebook ads for companies and get paid. Right, I don't know how everything connects. I don't know what I got to do. I don't know whatever. Don't know how to get clients. Don't know anything. And I know nothing, guys. And I thought I did. I didn't.
That 10 G's was a big move for you. I mean,
massive.
That's what catapulted everything.
Dude, I would
pulling the trigger.
I would have been screwed. I would have been back selling cars if I didn't have that. No doubt in my mind. Right? Like, yeah, no doubt in my mind. So anyway, that is how it all came about. And you know, from there we can get into everything else. But yeah, first month was January. We sold nothing. Right? I was running a paid ads at like $5 a day or $10 a day on Facebook because once again, keep in mind now I got $2,000 in my bank account. I still have to pay rent. I still have student loan payments. I still have a car payment. Right? I got a truck from Ford, and we sold nothing in January. And if we didn't sell anything in February, I was going back to selling cars. Luckily, now I know that was a good time of year for our business and our industries, and we did. I think I sold $3,400 worth in January or February, and so we made it to the next one. And then actually luckily my gift of what I'm good at is sales, and that helps, right? So we hit that first 10K benchmark in like 3.5 months, which was like everybody in this group went crazy, and they're like, "How'd you do that?" Right? It's like, I don't know, dude. Right?
In that short of a time.
And that short of a time, correct. Like I had guys like 8 months, like I don't know how you did that, right? But then as we started growing, I started to hit challenges that sales don't solve, right? Sales solve a lot of things, but not actually building a real company. So
yeah, because I mean the sale, like that's the big thing too with all these other guys is they're probably not natural salespeople or had been doing sales at any level.
Correct.
You know, they're watching this and like, oh yeah, I'll start this thing because it's easy and
yep.
You know, whatever. But I think too, like once there's there's a confidence that comes with like seeing success.
Mm-hmm.
Like once you start, it's like, oh, like I can do this. This is legit. You
Yep.
know, like I can actually like make money here. And it gives you that confidence that you can hold in meetings that everyone else needs to see.
Correct.
But you're still battling the
Yep.
the people that are just completely burned on this.
Absolutely. Dude,
Don't trust you.
That's what I was just going to say.
whatsoever.
And the guys that are listening, like, agencies still suck. You know, this is the kid in his basement. You're right. I was the kid in my office, like in my house, my apartment, my 1-bedroom apartment, right? And, but the difference, I mean, there's a clear difference, right? Because all those guys that are kids in basements, they're going to go out of business. They're not going to be doing what they're doing a year from now. Where like the difference was when I started working with contractors, I very, very quick, because we did everything right away. We did Cairo, like I would get a client wherever I could. We did Cairo, we did epoxy flooring, we did HVAC, we did insulation, we did painting, we did a bunch of different stuff. We did graphic design, right? We'd do anything. And the more I worked with contractors, the more I started getting frustrated because I was like, this is harder with home service companies than it is selling apparel or selling a product that will, like an affiliate marketing product, right? I'm like, this is difficult. And if you're raised correctly, you have an issue with not providing the right service, right? You can't just turn a blind eye to it. And trust me, there's many times where I wanted to because I get pissed. Like all these other guys were crushing me.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And they're just churning people in their piles.
Yeah, it would be.
They don't care.
It'd be sale after sale after sale, knowing that literally within 2 months.
Gone.
One, their sign up month, and then 2, just to go, yep, nothing's happening here, we're done.
Yep.
They were just burning and turning as many as they could, as fast as they
Yep.
could.
And they don't care because they were spending enough to where they had acquired 10 new companies by the time the one dropped off.
Yep.
Right. And do the math, guys. There's like 180,000 something HVAC companies. It's huge growing them up. They're always there.
And that's why I feel like the industry it's so shady.
Yep.
If you can't find somebody that's actually trying to do it right and
Correct.
actually give you the results that you're actually paying for.
Yep.
Because it is, I mean, we even signed up for one, I don't know, a couple years in. It was actually relatively local in Duluth, and it was like, yep, sales guy was great, liked him, trusted him, signed up, passed the buck. Now you're talking to whoever, don't like him, didn't give you results. 2 months later, yep, see you guys.
Yep.
This isn't anything about what you said or
Correct.
any of the results that you
Correct.
promised us getting. So why would we do this?
Yep.
Because that's like, it's like the golden ticket. If you can actually do something that works for people and it gets them what they want,
Yeah.
they'll keep feeding you money.
Correct.
Oh, you can actually do this? Like, well, I'll go out on a limb and I'll try you out here.
Yep.
Basically is what it is.
Yep.
A little trial here. And you can have this much, not the whole pie, but I'll give you a little bit. If you can do that, I'm going to give you more. If you can do that, I'll give you more. If you can do that, then you're creating customers for life.
Correct.
But it's like that. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Correct.
If
And
I
quite-
can do something for you that's going to make you more money,
Exactly.
you would continue to pay me money.
And quite frankly, like there's a very distinct line between companies that can actually do that and companies that can't in terms of like how big they get, right? Because like I can tell you from experience, this whole business changes when people actually pay you month after month after month after month and they don't go anywhere.
Right.
And you're not churning half your client base and then trying to acquire it again. Because the cost per acquisition as in an agency, it's actually pretty high. Like you talk to some HVAC guys and they're selling a $14,000 HVAC unit, right? And they're mad at their cost per acquisition is $1,200 or $700 or whatever, right? Our cost per acquisition is $1,100 to $1,400. So a lot of times I'm losing money on you month one. Right, unless I'm charging a crazy amount, sometimes I'm keeping my margins way down. Like it's not super profitable. There's a lot of money, but it's not profitable if you can't actually retain the customer. You're not going to see those 45% profit margins or 75 or whatever, right? You're going to get, you're going to get your ass kicked. Yeah, you might put a few bucks in your pocket, but it's like, dude, you're not making much. And being able to do that, I mean, we've seen that as we've gotten better and better and better, and it's like. Now we got people that have been with us for over like a year and a half, 2 years, right? Going on 2 years. We got one guy that I think his 2-year mark was like March 18th or something. It's coming up, right? So, it completely changes the ball game when you can actually do that, right? I mean, it's not going to happen with everyone. Like it's the way that marketing is. Like you're not always going to be able to crush it for everybody. It is going to change. You're going to have to come to that realization that like it's not going to be amazing for everybody. But what you can do is set the right expectations, right? Make sure they're within their comfort of what they're spending and what they can lose, right? You're not gambling. You're making an educated guess, right? So,
well, it's not going to be a home run every time
Correct.
for every client. You know, there's industry plays into it, population, cities, competition, everything plays into it. So
yep,
there's always people that are going to get better results than others.
absolutely.
But I think the other thing that I think we missed on too is that you stopped doing everything and you niche down.
Mm-hmm.
And like then you became an expert.
Yep.
And that's when the sales were easier because
Yep.
you knew what you were talking
You're
about.
speaking their language, yeah.
Like you're talking about stuff like you owned a contracting company
Correct.
and these, you know. And I'm like, okay, like I mean, he obviously knows what he's talking about now because that's all you're doing.
Correct.
And I think that really helped too.
Without a
was that
doubt.
like that next level of, okay, let's stop trying to be everything for everyone
Yep.
and just be these guys and
Do
niche
this.
down.
Yep, let's get really good. And that's what we did. You know, like you're right, we did brush over that. So like when I quit selling cars, like we were doing everything, right? But when I quit selling cars, immediately the first thing I did was pick an industry. And I picked HVAC just because I was better at talking to blue collar people. They're my people. And, you know, you can get on the call and cuss with them and whatever, right? And so I
After
picked,
they cuss.
Yeah, right.
Then you're okay.
Right. Sometimes I'll just whip it out first just to show them what's up. No, you know. But yeah, no, it's so I picked HVAC. Quite frankly, guys, they have a high ticket price, right? Installs are on average 5 to 23 grand, right? So easy to show a return. You sell one system, they paid themselves, got paid back from what we did, right? So that's why we picked that. And then installation probably came a year and a half, 2 years later. And with a guy that was just extremely persistent. And I'm like, hey, you're going to pay full price. We don't know what's going to happen, but this is what it's going to do. Installation actually turned out to be a much easier industry than HVAC did, right? Because there's more ways to sell it. It's more attractive to homeowners. But yeah, and then that's all we do now. And, you know, towards the future, we may add things like solar and maybe roofing. But the only reason we would do that is because we're working with a lot of big companies that are going like this whole eco home model. So if you look in Arizona, California, Texas, Florida, whatever, there's companies now that are they're going to come in on insulation. They're going to sell you your insulation. They're going to sell you a high efficiency HVAC system. They're going to put a new roof on your house and they're going to add solar panels. Right.
That's smart.
So they get in with a CPL, like their cost per lead, their cost per acquisition is $400 for the installation client, but they walked out of there with a $180,000 ticket price.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you see a lot of that in just a ton of companies. It's like, hey, we crush doing this, but, you know, here's a quick offshoot that also supplies what we're doing.
Correct.
But it's a different thing. So we'll just, you know, start a sister company or a subsidiary or something like that. When then, you know, we just got a cool deal from a company, and they own, like, I think I counted like 9 brands, but they're not all random 9 brands, you know. So there's a holding company that manages and works with all and supports all, but they're all like relatively in the same, doing the same thing, selling to each other their products and stuff like that, as well as everyone else.
Correct.
That's what you constantly see is like, yeah, we figured this out. But then we kept seeing a need for these things, and then we just said, you know what, screw it. Let's just do it ourselves, add it on, you know, and now we can keep growing that.
Look at it at a smaller scale, too. Like, even companies that you worked with, like, look at Haley. They started heating and cooling. Now they do electrical, they do plumbing, they do lighting, they do fireplaces, right?
It's all around the same.
Because they helped the customer, and then the customer needed the next thing, and they're like, okay, we got our shit together. Let's do the next thing. Right? I'll bring it all under one house. And then you can look at that from just a single company standpoint like that, or from, you know, a holding company or a PE, you know, a private equity firm that's holding all companies that relate.
Yep.
Right? So, yeah.
Side note, this whiskey's very good.
It is good.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
We could have used better ice cubes, but
so
it's
far.
good.
Yep. We haven't had a, Joe, we need to do that.
Yeah, what's going on?
Let's get the machine that does the nice balls of ice that we can enjoy.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask, just for those people too, that, you know, I know you're in HVAC and installation, but there's probably similarities between, you know, other agencies. What do people need to be like looking out for when they're talking to these companies? Yeah, and they're comparing, because a lot of times too, when they're comparing, they don't just go with the first guy. Usually there's, you know, a handful that they're looking at.
So to make it really, really easy, right? Obviously, you're going to want to see like what kind of work they've done in the past. That's what any smart company is going to do. Like, hey, what does your process look like? Like, send me some referrals or give me like for example, we have people ask for referrals all the time. Do not get mad if they don't give you their cell phone numbers. Like I don't care if we don't work with a $100 million company because they want to call the cell phone of the people we already work with. I will not give you their cell phone number, right? I'll give you the company and I'll give you who you need to talk to. Feel free to call, right? The guys that are running these businesses that you want to speak to, that are up and going, that are doing things, that are making, they don't want to talk to random people all the time, right? We have 43 sales calls a week, right? You know how many people ask for numbers? So just once again, if they give you any type of referral that you can get a hold of, fantastic, right? So that, if you want to go through that route, that's awesome. But in terms of looking at what they can actually provide, I'll break it down into like two separate things. So one, if you're looking at, you know, Facebook or any disruptive platform, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, you need to look at their process. Like, hey, what is your process? What is my customer going to go through when they come through your ad or funnel or whatever, right? If it is 9 times out of 10, if they're like, oh, well, they click on the ad, it's going to run them, you know, it's going to pop up a form, they're going to fill out their information, we're going to send it to you, we're going to do a bunch of stuff on the back end, right? Not always, but 9 times out of 10, that should be some sort of like a red flag, because in most markets, that's called a lead form, for anybody who doesn't know. 9 times out of 10, that's not going to drive depending on what industry you're in, it's not going to drive the customer that you want, right? Take it from a standpoint of the customer. I see your ad on Facebook, I click on it. Facebook autofills all of my information besides like one question. I type something in, I press submit.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about you. I don't expect you to call me. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't even remember you. So that's one thing. They need to have a back-end process, right? Need to have some sort of process the customer is going through. They should sound like an expert, right? And then on like the PPC or LSA side, right? Just make sure, like, try and get some sort of structure from them. That's more of I like to call those boring ads, right? They are boring, right? It's just a direct search ad, right? You're going to be listed Google guaranteed for an LSA ad or whatever. You're going to be searching different keywords. You're going to have negative.
Still, not a lot of people are doing that.
Correct.
LSAs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tried, and they didn't have our industries.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, LSA doesn't have a lot. Actually, they're just launching insulation across the country just now. It used to be under handyman services, and now they're launching it as like an actual thing. But yeah, you can't. Not everybody can do LSA, but obviously make sure that you're seeing some kind of process there. If they're going to tell you, "Hey, I'm running PPC ads to your website," get the out of there. Okay, right? Your website is not made to run paid traffic to, guys. No, you have to. If you have an actual offer, right, run them to a landing page. Yeah, you can have a small budget LSA ad or PPC ad, very small budget running to your website. But if you do, you better have a way to track those customers, right? You better be using Hotjar or something, or at least have a landing page on your website that you're running them to. Paid traffic is not meant to go to websites. Use a landing page. Make it easy for the customer. The customer clicked on it for a reason, to get an offer for something that you had. They want to see that. They don't want to get random about me. Look at us for the last 40 years.
And you have a lot of you have the qualifying questions then too on that
Correct.
landing page, on that squeeze page where that's, again, they land there, you're taking them through a journey.
Correct.
You know, what do we need them to see to do this, to almost pre-qualify, because again, then you don't get all the, hey, we got you a bunch of crap leads, you know.
Correct.
Have fun, because then they're going to just get pissed and not use you again.
Correct.
Every time I've tried to run ads like that too, it's like we just get
trash.
Just the most random, dumbest things, and it's like, okay, well, this clearly didn't work. Like we needed to have something that pre-qualified people to go, yep, you're qualified, you have a need, we know we can help, do this, you know. And
so you bring up a good point, and it circles back to what should people look for. Guys, if you get on a sales call with an agency and they're selling you the moon, and it sounds, even if it sounds too good to be true, I'm telling you right now it is. Okay? If you're on a sales call with an agency or a firm or whatever, they should get you excited, right? Hey, we can do all this. Let's look at what we've done. And then they're going to get very realistic, right? They should go into actual numbers. This should be your CPL. This should be your booking rate. This should be your close rate. They should learn about your company. If the agency that you call automatically says they can help you, run the other direction. Right? I'm going to be honest, for people that are listening, your company might suck, right? You might have, your company doesn't suck, right? But you might not have the infrastructure to handle paid ads, right? To handle paid ads, you need to have a really great SOP on the back end. You need to have a good process for that customer to go through. In the contracting space, you need some incredibly solid CSRs. Your appointment setters have to be phenomenal. They are the most important role in this entire process. If they do not set appointments, you do not get in homes, and you do not sell a damn thing. right? So if if they don't ask you questions like that and know about your business, that's another red flag. Run the other direction. Or if it sounds like they're selling you the moon and they tell you they're going to give you, hey, I'll write you a $2,000 check if I don't generate 80 appointments in month one, or let's make it realistic, 15 appointments in month one, right? You're going to get to the end of month one and you're going to say, hey, I got 3 appointments out of all these leads. None of them sold. It sucked. And they're going to tell you, well, unfortunately, if you look at the contract, you didn't email us every Friday saying whatever. You didn't update everything in the portal. So unfortunately, that voids the guarantee. We can't write you a check, and you're fucking screwed, right?
And these guys are creative too. Like they have like layers, like company under like a company under something else. And it's like, so even if you try to go after them, it's just like a nightmare.
Correct. This is a true story. So where Josh is pulling this from, I went to a mastermind. And these guys have given me crap about it ever since. I went to a mastermind in Costa Rica. Once again, actually a good program. Met a lot of good guys. But one thing in the agency space, especially what we're talking about today, you have a lot of dirt balls, right? So as this person that's putting this on, right, when he knows that there's some dirt balls here that don't actually care what the customer is receiving, right, they'll teach you to structure your company in a manner, and some of this may be valid advice, some of it maybe not, I don't know. I haven't done any of it, right? But they'll teach you to structure your company in a manner where, like, if anybody wants to come after you, they'll never find you. Right? Which maybe that's smart, maybe it's not. Maybe you should just, instead of focusing on structuring your company, you should focus on getting better at what you're actually fucking supposed to be doing.
Just do a good job.
Right? Yeah, just do a good job. But yeah, so that is a very real thing. They do get pretty shifty about it.
Let's say, I think that's the hard thing, is a lot of anything within marketing and advertising, there still falls into this like negative, don't trust anything. Give it a shot. Everyone gives it a shot. I'll give it a shot. Yep, it sucked. I'm pissed now because I just spent 40 grand, 80 grand, 100,000, whatever. And like, it just didn't work. Yeah, it didn't do what they said. So then they'll never do it again.
Correct.
But then they go to the next guy and then they try the next thing and it just doesn't. So, we had a guy, we had two brothers on the last podcast.
I saw clips of that.
And one of the things that I said was like, how do you, it's hard because how do you tell somebody that you're not them, that you're actually a good person? Someone's going to say that, oh no, we're legit, we do all this things right, we'll take care of you. But then, it just drops off and it flops on its head.
Yep.
But it's like, at the same time, you're like, how do you just get that across? You can't just say it.
Yeah, most of the time, the way that we do it, the way that I personally do it, most of the time you're telling them how they can't work with you. Because then they want to work with you even more, and they're like, oh, this guy isn't just trying to sell me. Like, perfect example, I was talking to you, Josh, before this podcast. We had a very large franchise installation company, and they have a company that helps them set appointments and do sales and whatever, and they're looking to work with us. And funny enough, I was actually on a sales call with one of the largest locations of this franchise yesterday. And I would love to work with them. They do $12 million a year. For insulation, that's phenomenal. He has 3 locations, right? He just does insulation. And I'd love to work with them, right? But instead of saying, I can solve all your problems, I got this and that and this and that, I walked through what they had with him and his fractional CMO. And I walked through everything that they have going on. And I'm like, guys, they didn't once tell me that they were dissatisfied with one of the platforms. They're like, oh, we're crushing on Facebook. We're crushing on Google. Like, we're doing pretty well on Google. Like, we're doing whatever. And at the end of the day, I'm sitting there, I'm like, guys,
this is great. Why are we talking?
Why are we talking? I'm like, I didn't create a fancy new platform, right? I didn't create the next Facebook. I'm just using these platforms. If you're doing so well, spend more on Facebook. Up your ad spend. That's what ad spend is for, to scale the company, to scale the campaign. Right? The owner's pretty aggressive, and he's like, well, I don't need you to reinvent the wheel. Okay, well, I'm like, at very least, if you want to work with us, I'm like, just split test us against what you're currently doing, at the very least. I'm like, a lot of big companies will do that, like much bigger than him, like, 100 million plus. And, but yeah, so that's, to answer your question, like, that's a great way to do it, is to actually qualify people. People tell, I don't work with everybody. Bullshit. They'll work with anybody, right? When you actually are considering not working with someone, like some people call it a back out close, right? But that's when they really want to work with you, right? Because they're like, he's not trying to sell me. Maybe it's actually good, right? And it's just like, and if you stack that actually qualifying on top of being an actual expert.
Right.
Right. When I get in and I talk about different types of insulation and our values and what they're doing and how to train their people and how to structure the company and how to do this and that and that and this, they're like, you're the guy. Right. I had very quickly, I had a conversation with a guy yesterday. It was the end of the day. If he watches this podcast, Sam, I'm sorry. I was kind of mean right away. So I really was. And because I'm straightforward with people. I've been doing this a long time now. And he called. He had a company out of California. We work with a lot of companies out of California. He did... I'll say the numbers because I haven't said the company. He did 60. I asked him what he did in revenue. He's like, oh, we're a small company. We have 3 crews, right? Guys, a company of 3 crews should be doing, you could be doing $2 million a year, okay, in California with 3 crews. 3 crews. And I asked him what he did monthly, and he said he was doing like a couple thousand a month. And I'm like, I didn't understand. Maybe he didn't understand my question. So I'm like, what'd you do in 23? And I knew the company was only 2 years old, but he goes, well, we did about 60 grand in 23. I'm like, 60 grand. I'm like, Sam, I'm like, do the math. Your average install there is 12.5. You're putting in 4 systems all year long? What are you doing? So, rightfully so, he got pissed at me because he's like, I didn't call you to get your opinion on my business. I'm like, I get that, Cam, but I'm trying to understand if I can actually help you, right? But I was like, he gets a little upset with me, rightfully so. And it was the end of the day. I probably didn't have the nicest tone of voice. And he goes, hey, he goes, it's a phone call, right? And he goes, well, tell me what you can do, whatever. And the first thing I said to him, I was like, hey, man, I don't think I can actually help you. I'm like, but instead of leaving you high and dry and just, just being this prick on the other end of the phone just told you how bad you were, let me tell you what I think you should do. And I referred him to a bunch of different things that some of he was already doing that I think he should double down on, and some things that he wasn't doing that it's all within his price range of what's affordable. And when I got done telling him all that, the first thing he asked me, he goes, well, how much would it cost for you to do all that? And honestly, half of me is like, brother, based on this conversation, I don't want to work with you. But I don't know, right? So I walked him through. I'm like, we're not cheap. I walked him through, but I said, hey, before we ever move forward, I said, we need to get on another call, a separate day, and we need to go through expectations here, right? But just that, like giving him advice for no reason, right? Like, hey, even though you're mad at me, like, hey, let me actually give you some value here, just grow your business. Because I've got a company that's 50 miles away from you that started last year and did $1.5 million first year, right? So I know it's possible. Anyway, but those things are what's going to make you seem like an expert and you want to do business with someone.
But even then, you're still trying to set yourself up for success.
Correct.
Because if they're not qualified at the same time, even if you want their money, or even if you could help them.
Yeah, not all money is good money.
They could be a complete hassle and a pain in the butt.
Correct.
It's like, Colton, you said you were going to do this. And
correct.
Even if you set good expectations, hey, this doesn't happen month 1.
Yep.
But, month 1 happens and you didn't get those results. And it's like, well, we didn't have a plan of doing this unless it was working.
Correct.
So it's like all that, and you know that too, and that's why it's like...
Yeah, as an established agency, you have to set those boundaries, right? Like, that's why I told the guy, like, we have to have another conversation, like, with the other owner to really dive deep on here, because I'm like, I told you, the first thing I told you is, hey, I can't work with you, right? And it's not that, like, he switched the script on me and, like, switched the script, and I'm like, oh, yeah, let's do it. I'll take your money. We're still not there, right? Because if you're become a pain in my ass, right, you're going to be more work for me than I am anything. Like, I'm going to be really honest with you. Your $2,000 a month program for month 1, I lost money on you, and now I'm dealing with a whole bunch of other crap because you weren't set up for success, right? So you have to make sure you're setting the right expectations, but also knowing what partners to take on and what to just toss down the road.
So what's the future look like for Tier 1, and then even just past that, just future plans?
Yeah, so the original thought, because I was sold on the whole, it's super easy thing, right? Which it's not. 4 years later, guys, it's not easy. Original thought was to build the firm, the agency, and sell it, right? Because they sell well if you do them right. That is no longer the plan. So it's been hard enough to build. We've got a good team. We're continuing to build a good team. We want to continue to grow into, like I said, we may add on a couple other industries. We're not going to get physical locations. We'll stay remote, right? We're going to build a solid team, probably add one more big leadership position And then obviously account management and stuff will grow with client acquisition as that continues to go up. But the goal is to stay within the realm of our industries that we like and we perform well in. We are going to cap out at a certain point, right, to where I simply don't want to take the next step, because the next step, if I get too big, is absolutely physical locations. And that's just something I don't want to do right now. So the plan is to get the company to that point, which I foresee happening probably in the next 1.5 to 2 years. Right, we're very, 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 very close right now. There's a few key roles that we're missing, and when I plug those in, we're golden, right? In theory, okay? So that's the plan with Tier 1. Stay in our industry, stay what we're good at, continue to evolve and create new processes. We're really, really good at that. I'm not good at that, guys. I just have ideas. My team is awesome. I'm very clear where it's like, hey, if you have ideas, we're going to try and implement them. We're going to see how they work, and we're going to continue evolving and innovating on our side so we can be the best cutting edge in the market, right? That's the plan with Tier 1. Now, past Tier 1, because it's kind of a natural evolution, and never plan on doing this, because I've gotten so familiar with these industries, and I've made so many connections within the industries, and I understand how these businesses run and operate, right, to a certain extent.
Right.
Now the next goal is we're going to start acquiring companies. So we're going to start acquiring home service companies, specifically insulation, HVAC, what we know best. Who knows? It may grow into other industries as well, but at first just that, right? And it's not just going to be me. I can tell you right now, I will never, ever, ever build another company from the ground up. And I'll never do it, right? It's extremely hard, right? With no partners, it's not an easy task. No money, right? It's different if you have money, but still not an easy task to have. Money doesn't solve everything. So we'll start to acquire, and we'll either scale, right, that company and sell it, or if it cash flows well, it's a good, it's easy to handle. It's not a massive headache, right? A lot of the team stays on, whatever it might be. They have good culture, right? We'll keep it and we'll just cash flow that business, right? So essentially like a private equity firm is what we'd be creating in the long run. Now, obviously that's not all me, right? I still just have Tier 1. We'll have partners in that. But that's the plan for the future, right? And then who knows, obviously everybody has plans for real estate and blah, 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 blah. But
I don't.
Yeah, I know you don't. I know you don't. Yeah, hey, it's facts. Business churns more cash. Like a profitable business is going to pay you way more than a piece of land is.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that really stood out too, just talking about like the real estate side. And I'm still current, Josh is like, no, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Eventually, will I want some and, some of that long-term whatever safety? Maybe.
Yeah.
But there's guys that to me, it still feels like a safer bet.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a long-term safer bet. It's like, you could invest into this or just have it into real estate because real estate never loses in the long run.
Yep.
But it's still like, okay, like if I'm just investment only, maybe.
Yep.
But if I'm trying to make money and do different things and grow and scale,
yep,
I don't see this being the fastest route.
I agree completely.
Do people make it happen? Absolutely, all the time.
Yep.
But to me, less of that happens, and also a lot of them don't scale it as what they thought they were going to do when they first got into it. So there's that whole idea of like, you watch some of the guys with the biggest companies, and they're like, well, don't listen to people that say put all your eggs in all these baskets, and it's like, no, like put your eggs in one basket, focus on it,
Correct.
Grow it like crazy, put all your time and energy and effort into the learning how to be the very best at that, and grow it like crazy.
Yep.
So it's like, you hear guys like that, and you're like, oh, I can't not listen to that advice because they're a billionaire and they're telling all these millionaires what to do.
Correct.
It's like, so that's pretty interesting too, just like that standpoint. But also just knowing like what, and you kind of said it too with the things that you have learned, you see it being a building block of like, I could take a stagnant company,
Correct.
Still a good company, but maybe stagnant, and I can plug what I know now into said company to try to grow that profitability, to make it look a little sexier, set in 3 to 5 that, somebody wants to acquire that because we were able to do all these things, put these things in place. So I think what you're doing does that well, and I think what we're doing does that well too, is like, I can take that and help it in all these different ways, make it look completely even different and go, damn, like that thing's rocking and rolling now.
Correct.
And I've heard people talk about it. We've had a couple guys now that have been on the podcast that have bought companies. I think there's 2 now. And it's that cool journey, because they're telling me I would never start a company ever. Like I think that's the hardest thing in the world to do. And I'm looking at them like, I think acquiring a business would be like really hard to do. And I feel like I could easily start another company, especially now that I have more money, more resources, and a way better network. I'd crush, but they're seeing it at the flip side. And I'm like, I got to dive more into this acquisition thing. Because again, still using money, resources, and network, but just buying it, not having to start from scratch. And just go, hey, this is well running, but maybe the owner doesn't have a retirement plan, exit plan. Great. Let's move in. Let's try to do something with this. So it's really interesting. And I don't know exactly how to learn a lot about it yet, but I want to dive more in. The reason I haven't focused on it yet was just because I know what MediaCore can be. And I don't want to
it doesn't make sense.
Gaze into something else because I'm like,
it's
we
different
could scale like
stages of
crazy.
business, right? It's like if you were doing $100 million a year, $50 million a year, or whatever, right? Then it's like, okay, like what else can we get our hands in, right? But it's like, no, it doesn't even make sense. I mean, you're talking about real estate, like the only time anytime soon, like obviously I was talking about business acquisition. The only time anytime soon, and keep in mind, I'm taking a small piece of a big pie. I'm fine doing that 7 times over, right? Fantastic. I play my role. I know what I'm good at, right? You guys are all good, right, at what you're good at, and we're going to run this baby, right? Awesome. For real estate, the only reason I see myself acquiring real estate anytime soon is to not make money. It's to keep my money. Right? I'm going to use it for taxes, guys. IRS, don't watch this. You know?
Well, they know it's good.
Right? But it's interesting. So a quick side note. So I was just on I was on a trip to Denver with a friend of mine, and I met a friend of his who, once again, just networking, meeting people, and he owns also an online business. Obviously, I know a lot of guys that are in the online space. He owns an online company where he coaches fitness coaches. Okay, right? Which right off the top of your head, I'm like, this is the guy from the beginning of the call. This is the guy that couldn't do it, so now he's telling people how to do it. Right? This guy actually crushes. He's very good at what he does. He actually initially placed salespeople, and he's a phenomenal salesperson. And then now he just coaches them on top of the placing salespeople. Right? But I was able to learn a lot from him in these 2 days that I was there, and it kind of blew my mind because he's 2 years older than me. He started the company, the first year he was in business, he did over $1 million in revenue. This company has a 75% profit margin. It is insane. And he provides a really good service. It's not like 75% because we're scraping off and screwing everybody that's buying from me. Right? His media buyer, which is somebody who places your ads and does your advertising, his media buyer is also his closer and his coach. And then he has one VA, virtual assistant. Okay? And that's how he runs his team. And he also handles some sales calls and stuff as well, right? But he has this infrastructure, and it has phenomenal profit margins. And we were in the car, and he has this partnership with a guy in real estate, right? Where he is just this year, he's like, hey, let's just say his name is Jim. I gave Jim $300,000 this year, and he's going to get me into deals. I'm financing it. He's getting a piece of equity for finding the deals. You can cut Jim out of it if you want to. But he's doing it to save on taxes. Right? He's also acquiring assets at the same time. Obviously, the goal is to cash flow them, but let's all be honest. If we've learned a little bit about real estate, you're buying a duplex, you're going to make $600 a month, okay? You're not balling here. So if he's making money, great. But it's like that's really cool. It's like, okay, so you're winning in all facets right now. Right. Like, that's awesome. But, just once again, kind of relative to what we were talking about. It was just very, very cool way to do it. And he managed to do it. Like a lot of us online guys in the online space, we like to do it as hands-free as possible. Right? So that's what he has a guy that finds the deal. Yes, he finances all of it, but he has the cash, right? And he loses some equity, but he doesn't care. It saves on taxes, and he's got an asset.
And he doesn't have to spend all of his time trying to learn it and do it. Not a thing. Figure it out.
The guy that finds the deals is an existing real estate agent. He has the lenders. He knows what a profitable deal looks like, right? It's sick.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So what are some of the things, just kind of as we're wrapping up again, that you would say that have made a big impact in your life and your business journey, advice that you could pass on to, anybody, because we have a lot of people at a lot of different stages, and there's certain people, obviously, different things that most don't, So what are some of those things that have stood out in your journey that you could speak on?
Yeah. So a couple things for people in different stages. So if you're new and you want to start a business and you're watching this, because obviously we're new in business and Josh is fun to watch and makes a lot of content, which is true, right? You got a lot of cool content out there. And you're like, oh, how do I do it? How do I get on my job? Just find yourself a Josh who makes you choose a day to quit. Right? And even if it looks like, the ship's going up, worst case scenario, next month you go back to your job. Right. So that's one thing. That's a massive thing. I would not be where I am if I didn't have that. Right. Maybe I would have got to it at some point, but who knows what that would look like. Right. And then for guys that are farther along in business and even farther along than myself, I can't speak to how you should run your business because you're farther along than I am. But what I can speak is to your advertising. So if you're looking for marketing and you're like, oh, I need more leads, right? Everybody needs more leads, right? Mm-hmm. Just make sure you find the right team that actually has your best interest in mind. Make sure they have a process. Make sure if you don't have the right team, you get rid of them immediately. Make sure they have good processes. Find companies they've worked with. Make sure they actually understand your industry. Make sure they set the right expectations, right? If you want, you're not going to get this rainbow dust, pony, unicorn BS, okay? It's not out there. I'm telling you right now, you're always going to, paid advertising in general, you're never going to have, it's never going to be as good as referrals. I've ran on 3 years and I'm referral based. I want paid ads now. You're never going to have that again, ever. You're at a different part of your business now. Even if you're $100 million and now you're like, I need leads, okay? They're not going to be the same. Make sure you have the infrastructure internally. You have great appointment setters. You have great salespeople. They know they have to sell the appointment. They have to sell the service. Find a good team that knows your industry, that actually gives a shit about what you do. And then keep them in check, right? Don't baby them too much. Keep them in check. And just trust what they're doing as long as they're returning, right? They're not going to happen in month one, but as long as you see that constant uptick and you actually know your numbers and you're like, what the hell is going on with all my money, right? As long as you're not in that situation, you just continue with that company and continue to grow, right? You're always going to have a cost per acquisition with paid ads. It's not a referral. So to make sure your cost per acquisition per customer is profitable, to the moon you go. You will find a threshold in your market. You're going to hit too many people. You're not going to have enough people. But that'd be it. I mean, I'd say that that's probably the biggest touch
that's
point.
Good.
Right?
That's really good. Yeah, because I feel like most businesses that have grown to a certain level understand this need of sales. They just need to consistently be doing that, focusing on revenue. Even the guys that are like, oh, no, we've been doing this for a while, like we're set, we have our people. Yeah. They're going to slowly die until they, continue to push for more new.
For sure. Or your kid's going to take it over and he's going to call us.
Yep.
That's where we see this. Like a lot of that is these 30, 50-year-old companies, 60, 80-year-old companies we've worked with, is like they call and it's the kid. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, I'm taking over my dad's. Like, we need to do some marketing.
Yep.
Right? And it's like.
If they ran it like this because they were able to run it like this, you're not.
Correct.
Things have changed. Everyone's doing it.
Yep.
And if you're not, then again, like you're completely missing out.
Correct.
On certain things.
Yep, 100%. Yep. And then it's just making sure your team is in place. Because right with those older companies, the first thing we have to replace or train is Sally at the front desk. Mm-hmm. Right? Because she's used to getting calls from John down the road, calls, referrals, word of mouth, right? You need me to come out and help you? Yep, you bet. Right? Well, you're not dealing with John, who's a referral anymore. You're dealing with Andrew, who saw your Facebook ad, who's like, I'm interested. They need to be sold on the appointment. Mm-hmm. They need to be sold on the service. Different story. So just make sure training is in place. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, sweet, man. This has been great.
Beautiful.
It's been fun. We we're rocking on a little over an hour now, and it's been good. We've been chatting about doing this for a while. Mm-hmm. It's been good, and I hope again listeners can take some really good nuggets from this and be applying it, especially HVAC people.
Correct.
You know how to call now. So.
Yep. Yeah, you're not wrong.
But yeah, it's been good, and look forward to. Again, a lot of growth in the next 5 to 10. So,
tell you what, catch us on the jet. See you guys later.
Yep. Next pod that me and Colton have. And as always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, if you learned something, if you like this, continue to share it out. We want to keep reaching more people. We want to keep getting cool guests on, and we look forward to the next one.